teams. Welcome to team training 3. We're going to start today's training with a Portuguese lesson. We're going to start with one of the most popular phrases that you're going to hear on the boat and in the villages, and it's so useful for you to engage with Brazilians, which is good morning. You're going to say bom dia. So for this one, you see an am at the end of bom. You're not gonna mark that M. That M is gonna kind of fly. You're gonna let it mute. It's gonna say bom dia. Can we say it together? Bom dia. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now it's afternoon. And you're gonna greet people. You're gonna go back to the ministries right after lunch and your nap, and then you're gonna say boa tarde. Boa tarde. Wonderful. And if your R's roll in the tarde, that's okay. They know what you mean. There are other places in Brazil that do say tarde, so that's fine. Priscilla, is there a different word for bom and boa? No, it's the same word. It's good. It's just in Portuguese, everything is, feminine and masculine. And apparently, Gia is a boy and then tarde is a girl. So there's that. How about good night? In Portuguese, we only have one way to say good evening and good night. So you're gonna hear people, especially people that try to speak to you in English, they're gonna see you at night and they're gonna say good night. They're not sending you to bed. It's just because we only have one way to say it. So in Portuguese, good night is boa noite. Can we say it together? Boa noite. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Boa noite. Portuguese, when you introduce yourself, and when people introduce themselves, they're usually gonna tell you their first name. We do that as a staff. As you can see, we only have our first name. Our emails are first name because that's very Brazilian culture. So if you want to engage someone and ask their names, you're gonna say qual é seu nome. Now we're gonna practice it slow. You're gonna practice here with me. If you're watching at home, you're gonna practice it slow, but you don't say what is your name when you're asking someone, right? You say what's your name. So we're gonna practice it slow and we're gonna practice it fast, okay? Okay, so slow goes like this. Qual é o seu nome? Can we do it together? Qual é o seu nome? Now fast. Qual é o seu nome? Qual é o seu nome? Qual é o seu nome? Perfect, perfect. And then you can introduce yourself and you're gonna say meu nome é. You see, when there is that little thing on top of the letter E, that's like this, it's an open sound. So, meu nome é. Can we do it together? Meu nome é. Now you're going to practice saying just your first name. Can we do it all with the first name? Let's go. Meu nome é Priscila. Perfect. Perfect. For this one specifically, you're gonna need your nose. This is one of Steve's favorite, and it's Deus te abençoe. Now listen, the sound of D goes da, not ja, da, da. Your tongue goes back a little bit. Deus, that's the word for God. Deus te abençoe. Abençoe. Okay, let's do it together. Deus te abençoe. Wow, wonderful. Love it. We have other phrases for you on our top 10 phrases on YouTube. If you haven't watched that video, we have some more phrases for you there to practice. And also, we recommend that you be practicing with any apps that you can find that you like. There's Duolingo, there's Babbel, there's other things going on. And also, you can always use Google Translate to practice and also use it there to communicate.
All right, thank you, Priscilla. You will not regret any minute that you spend learning just a few words of Portuguese. You're not going to be fluent, but getting a few words down where you can tell people good morning on the boat or in the village or bye, ciao, or God bless you, you're going to really, it's going to enhance. Like I said, as teams train and get better, everybody wins. You certainly win. All right, well, let's talk about another subject now. We're going to transition and talk about team collection supply list. This is one that often has some of the most questions that we have. I could get my computer unfroze here, but there's actually a slide picture, but there we go. All right. So I was telling Priscilla, I've used this slide for a long time now. So if you've been on our training, you've heard this story, and I'll update it one day. But it's such a good illustration of what we're about to talk about. And that's this thing called the Village Collection Supply List. But what's going on here is this was a men's ministry I was in several years ago. This gentleman to the left during the men's ministry, you can kind of tell in the picture there's a lot of smoke in the back. That's because this guy during our men's ministry meeting was using his edger very loud. He was burning things. He caught a dead palm tree on fire. It seemed like the apocalypse for just a moment. I mean, it's pretty impressive what all he was doing to try to distract what was going on in the men's ministry. But we just kept going. And then at the end, one of the village supply list we're going to ask you to bring is soccer balls. We hope you'll bring 12 or so. A lot of you will be doing 4 villages, so we like to give 3 villages, 3 balls per village. And so we asked, well, who's the captain of the football team? Of course, that's what they call soccer. And come to find out, it's this guy that was doing all the distractions. He comes over, we give him 3 soccer balls. They also, in this trip, doesn't always happen, but they had jerseys. And it really spoke the guy's love language. Afterwards, this guy went out and played soccer with the team, and the missionary that was with us said, in fact, some of you know he's not in the screen very well, Pastor Albemarle there, just his bill sticking into the right of the screen. He said that guy always did, that was always a distraction. That's the first time he had ever engaged with the team. The team said he was very gracious. He was a really good player, took it really easy on them. But it's amazing how simple things like soccer balls can help the gospel spread in a village because it's so valuable to them. So this is just one of the village collection supply lists that we're going to talk to you about. But this is an example of how these can help us get inroads into the village. So Priscilla is going to share with you some details about what this looks like. So Priscilla.
Let's go into the details of your village supply collection. That's one of the questions that we get a lot. What should we take? How much? And we're going to talk a little bit about this. Now, it's important to say that this does not fall in one person. This is something that we're going to do as a team. This is also a great opportunity to involve your church, your school, people that can't go but would like to somehow be involved on this trip. So our official list, it's on amazonoutreach.org under resources. You're going to go important information and you're going to see village supply collection list there. Okay, so for those that are doing any medical ministry or pharmacy, we also have the formulary for people that need to know more about medicine and things to take for the medical ministries. The men's and women's items, they're used for gift bags. If you don't have enough gift bags, they can be used as a draw or as a gift or answering questions. So those items are also listed there. Now, keep in mind that the gifts are not a requirement. You don't have to worry about, oh, I have to have certain gifts. They are optional. But they're also, who doesn't like gifts, right? They're also a way to draw and to just bless people. From my experience, from what I hear from team members and leaders, is like, I wish I had to give. Like once you're there, you wanna have something to give. So that's why we let you know ahead of time what you could be bringing that would be useful for them.
Hey, Priscilla, before you move, just because this slide, one of the big questions is about fishing hooks and fishing lines, which is on the
Mm-hmm.
collection supply list. So this picture here is kind of the ideal package. So bring bulk hooks in various sizes. You don't need really big ones because they fish by hand, 40-pound line, and then we divide it up with some leaders and put in a little bag like that. So just since we're got the picture to show you, that's always a big question. That's one of the biggest and most important things you can bring for the men's ministry. All right, thanks, Priscilla. Just didn't want to miss the opportunity.
No, that's right. And I know it's very difficult to plan for the village because there's no way to know ahead how many kids and women specifically we're gonna have. But you don't need to overthink. Everything works out. That's why we give you kind of like an estimate. So a very rough estimate is to prepare for 200 women's bags and 150 men's bags. And there's a lot of great ideas of what people like with the men, what's useful for the men and for the women there. Now for the VBS supplies, you can check our VBS manual also on the resources. But we estimate around 50 kids per village. And then 2 crafts per village because we work with them morning and afternoon. Um, Also, the priority item is 12 size, like 5 good quality soccer balls and maybe 6 small hand pumps because otherwise they won't have a way to pump the balls. And those pumps come with the needles. So those are something that we use at the end of the day. We get to give them. We usually give one for the women's team, one for the men's team, or more if we have. Also, keep in mind these boat supply collection lists, they are optional, but they're very useful. And our list here is of things that are not easy to find or you can't find in the Amazon at all. So if you like it to have for your team, um, please bring some Lysol wipes. Apparently, Lysol is no longer manufacturing the concentrate. So if you want to have an alternative for the trigger bites and the trigger treatment, we recommend that you bring Lysol wipes. Also, duct tape, that's very useful, not easy to find in the Amazon. Sharpie markers, nowhere to be found in the Amazon as well. And Ziploc bags, it's also an innovation for them. So a gallon size and sandwich size, those are very useful for VBS. Another thing, believe it or not, peanut butter, it's not something that's easy to find in Brazil. We don't eat pancakes like Americans. So if you want a syrup, please bring a regular size. That's enough for the whole team for the trip. And at the end of the trip, we usually have a celebration for the translators, for the crew, for the whole team. So if you would like to do something special, it can be as simple or as elaborate as you would like. We recommend that you bring party supplies and small gifts for the translators for the thank you. A lot of those gifts can be as a journal or any toiletries. If you have something from your church, you had an event and you have a lot of leftover t-shirts, they love t-shirts. That's a great thing too. And if you are planning to do the photo ministry, make sure you have all the things and the supplies that you need for that, like Bluetooth printer, the paper. We'll have more details on that later.
Thank you, Priscilla. And I will say that the photo ministry is extra cost. The links are in the Village Collection Supply list. What we recommend for just a portable printer from your phone on Bluetooth. But I was just on my last trip just a few weeks ago, and they have cell phones on Amazon. Surprisingly, they don't have printed photos though. This is something I went to home one time. They pulled out a picture. It was from 15 years earlier, when the first time our boat went to their village. So I really encourage your team, if possible, if someone can cover the cost, to add the photo ministry to your team. All right, let's talk about some really fun stuff, luggage information. So you can find your itinerary if you're wondering what's the itinerary. Go to managemissions.com and then you look under documents. You'll see the contracts for your flight, so you'll know which airlines, what time you're going to leave. Most of you are going to be American and Copa, but there are variations. So that's where you find your itineraries and Managed Missions account under documents. Most airlines allow for a free carry-on suitcase. That's like here to the right. And then a personal item. Backpack is probably the best one to bring, but pretty well everything that you're going to need personally can be packed in those two items because of our great laundry service. You'll want to look at our packing list, and there's a packing video to tell you how you actually put all that in in those two items. And then the next is to research each airline's bag policies because you should get a free check bag on most of your flying Copa at some point on your trip. And that should include a 50-pound check bag. Make sure it's not oversized. Make sure it's not overweight, or they'll charge you, or they will charge you for it. But on the carry-on, I'm sorry, on your domestic flight, those aren't covered. So I want to encourage you that number one, if you have status, if anybody on your itinerary, your locator number, if you have status and can get some free check bags for your team, please let your trip leader know that so that could save some people money. It can be up to $50 per, each way, like American or the domestic flight. So we just want you to be aware of that, not be surprised if you take supplies down, then we want you to be aware of that. You don't have to bring a check bag. However, you do have to check liquids over 3 ounces. So, for instance, your DEET, your bug spray, your um, sunscreen, shampoo, especially if you need a lot of shampoo, those are going to be over 3 ounces. So, those you have to put in a check bag. And so you can get with the other team members and consider reducing the number of check bags that you're bringing by a bunch of people at your packing party, if you have one, can bring those oversized liquids and put them in one suitcase as long as it's not over 50 pounds. So just want you to be informed on how it works with luggage. A few other items is if you are bringing a check bag, please bring collection supply list for the village bags that you can make on the boat. You can leave your check bag on the boat on the way back if it's not worth $50 and that's what it cost you to get it checked on your American or United or Delta flight, then you can leave it. And we would encourage you not to bring nice luggage because we empty all the luggage, create bags, and then put those bags back in that luggage and use that to haul it into the village. So it's going to get dirty and muddy and might have some abuse. So don't bring really nice luggage. Your team will likely divide the supplies at your final meeting's packing party, and not all teams have those, especially if you're a spread out team. But your trip leader will tell you when that is if you're having one. But that's when we recommend dividing up supplies and not just carrying all the VBS in one suitcase or all the soccer balls in another. It's rare, but every once in a while a check bag gets lost. So you don't want all of your same important supplies in one bag. It's better to spread them out. Also, the Bucket Ministry, a great ministry that actually was birthed out of Amazon Outreach. If you're willing to take filters down for them, they will actually cover your check bag fee. So the information, just go to thebucketministry.org, talk to the great people at the Bucket Ministry, and you can help them and they'll help you. So if you're not bringing a lot of village supplies, that's a great way to serve. You can put your oversized liquids in there and everybody wins. So, Priscilla, I'm going to pass it back to you. Something a lot more exciting. That's evangelism and culture. This is what it's all about. Your preparation is for this.
So, as we talk about evangelism, I feel like one of the biggest challenges is trying to start the conversation, trying to start a gospel conversation and bridge into a culture that you know very little about. We're going to go in depth on culture next training. We're going to see you here. We're going to talk more about Brazilian culture, but let's talk a little bit how culturally you can engage in a gospel conversation. First, you can use their lifestyle. Now, the villages are just great because you can bridge into so many of Jesus's stories and so many stories in the Bible because, there's so much about wells in boats, in river, and villages into the gospel. So that's one way that you can bridge into a conversation. You can also talk about things that are very important to them, like soccer. This is World Cup year, so you're an advantage. It's a big deal. Unless Brazil has just lost, I wouldn't talk about it. But just talk about soccer. That's a great way to bridge into the culture and cooking and all the things that they do. The other way to bridge into Brazilian culture, especially village culture, is about relationships. Ask about their families, and you can also talk about your family. One of the things if they could ask you, they're usually shy in the beginning. But once they get to know you, one of the things they want to know is about your family, your kids, your siblings, your parents, because that's something very important in Brazilian cultures, who your families are, who your friends are. So if you have printed pictures, I would get one of those, put inside of your Bible, and that's one great way for you to start gospel conversations and ask them about their families. They love to talk about their families, and then show them your families, and also find shared experiences. I also have 3 kids. Oh, I have 10. Well, I don't have 10, but I have 2. And then you can find things in common or differences that will be fun to talk about. The other thing in Brazil, especially in the villages, you're going to realize is the names. The names of the villages usually have a religious name. You can talk about that, like God gave me. There was a village called that, or there's good luck. And we can talk about, good luck. What does that mean? And also the name of the villagers. They usually have names. There can be religious. Oh, my name is Joseph, or José, right? Or Moisés, which is Moses. Oh, yeah, like the one in the Bible. And that's one way for you to seg into a gospel conversations using things that are very familiar to them. Now, if you get stuck and you don't know where to go, like, how do I continue this conversation? Don't forget the serving friends: who, what, where, why, when. And that's one way for you to continue to ask them question like, who are you with here? It's mostly unlikely that Brazilians will go anywhere by themselves in the villages. When they travel, it's usually with someone, and they're gonna say, "Oh, I'm here with my mom." Oh, really? Do you live with your mom? Does your mom live with you? Because that's something very common in the culture. Who lives with you in your house? And they're going to talk about all the multi-generation. Oh, I live with my mother-in-law. And that's one way for you to engage into a conversation. When you engage in a conversation in American culture, you usually ask, what do you do? That doesn't translate well because they're gonna think you're talking about what do you do, like I play soccer, I fish. They don't usually relate that to their job, because job is one of, that's not such part of your identity. So you can ask them, like, what do you do for a living, or what do you do for work? Then they will tell you what their work is. But if you ask them, what do you do? They're gonna think you're asking about the other activities. But it's nice to know, oh, I'm a fisherman. Oh, that's great. That's one way for you to segue into um, a gospel conversation. I had a guy from Texas one time that he had an amazing gospel conversations, just talking about the different snakes in Texas and the snakes that this guy had seen in his life. And the Texan guy had seen way more snakes. So the guy in the village was like, wow, I didn't know you had snakes in America. So that's one way that you're like, oh, you can find way. And of course, as you're doing that and you're going to have all these resources, your greatest resource to have a gospel conversation is the Holy Spirit. And guess what? He does speak English and Portuguese. And he knows everything about both cultures. He knows everything about that village, about that person, about your reality. So he can make that connection. So that's why we go ahead in prayer. We're praying, we have intercessors, and you go that morning in prayer. That God's going to prepare the words, that He's going to help you if you're shy, and to engage into those gospel conversations. And then also, one thing that we like to use is the diagnostic questions. which is usually you trying to figure it out what this person is spiritually. And that usually means what do they believe about God and about their salvation? What do they believe about heaven? So you can ask them, do you love God? And they're usually gonna say yes because that's a cultural thing. And then you can figure it out. But do you believe that if you were to, God forbid, I always like, God forbid, but if you were to die today, do you think you would be with the Lord? And the usual question that you're gonna hear is because they don't want to be cocky, and also because they are taught that way, is that I could never know. Oh, I would never assume. I would never presume that I would go to heaven because they're thought that they have to work for it to the bitter end. And that's still not an assurance. So that's when I like to get my Bible and show that the Bible actually assures us that if we believe in Christ, we can be with him, Ephesians 2, 8, and 9. And I love, especially when I'm doing door-to-door visitations, I like to ask them if they have a Bible, and I like to open their Bibles. They usually have a Bible, and they not used to. They don't have the habit of reading it. So I ask them, so they don't think it's just my Bible that says it. So I open in their Bibles. And if they don't have a Bible, I will have a Bible with me, and I'll make sure to mark that verse, Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, or any other verse that I use, so they can go back and see. So those are some ways for you to engage and bridge into culture and engage into a evangelism conversation.
Thank you, Priscilla. And one of my favorite diagnostic is after you ask if they think they'd go to heaven, and they usually say, I don't know or hope so, is ask the question, well, if you stood before the Lord and he asked you, why should I let you in? What would you say? And that really gets them to thinking and smiling and getting nervous sometimes because their answer to that question is revealing what their hope is in. Because usually at best it's going to be, well, I'm trying to be a good person, or do this, that, and the other. And then that's the opportunity to truly share Ephesians 2, 8, 9. You're saved by grace through faith. It's a gift, not of works. So uh, as you're talking, one of the transitions can be after you've spent plenty of time talking about them. Most people speed through the relation building too fast. In my experience, being with teams that go door to door, or men's or women's ministry, you can use these same approaches as you just get to know and love and care for the culture of the people that you're serving. But one transition is, we've come from the United States and we're followers of Jesus. Would it be okay if Priscilla shared her test what Jesus has done in her life? So that's a great transition in whether you're going door to door, or whether you're in a men's or women's group, and you transition into a personal testimony, which is what we're going to talk about now. There's the gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but there's also the gospel of Steve, of Priscilla, of you. And one of your most powerful tools you're going to take to the Amazon is your testimony. But because it's cross-cultural, another challenge about being cross-cultural is it's going to take twice as long for you to tell your story. And I've heard a lot of testimonies over the years, and a lot of times they're way too long. They're not very much to the point, and that's because they didn't go through our training. But I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to help you sharpen one of the greatest tools you have to be an impact spiritually. And many of you are thinking, I'm not going to share my testimony, and you're wrong. You're going to get thrown under the bus by some missionary that's going to say, hey, you come up here, tell your story. So I want to go ahead and prepare you. You need to be prepared. So I'd rather you be prepared than just get up there and wing it. So let me give you a couple of tools on how to really sharpen the tool of your personal testimony. This is called the 15-second testimony. So if you can tell your testimony in 15 seconds, you can certainly do it in 3 minutes, which is what we ask you to do. Get your testimony down to 3 minutes. But if you can do it in 15, you're going to create a great skeleton to build on to do 3 minutes. So how do you do that? Well, let me give you an example. The first part of it is to describe your life before Christ. And just try to think of a powerful emotion word that would really summarize your life before Christ. So for me personally, there was a time in my life when I had no purpose and I was fearful of hell. So those are two different things that I would say about this was my life before Christ. And then you need a concise way of saying how you came to Christ. Now, you can say it however you want, but I just like to say, but then I put my faith in Jesus and began to follow him. And then I end it with what Jesus has done in my life. And it should be a compliment or a relief or a fulfillment of the angst that you had before Christ. So I would say that now I have eternal purpose and I have peace with God. I'm no longer worried about hell. So let me just do it for you in one simple sentence. So a 15-second testimony, you're in an elevator, you just have an opportunity to share really quickly. It could look like this. There was a time in my life when I was fearful of hell, but I put my faith in Jesus and I began to follow him, and now I have complete peace with God. Has anything like that ever happened in your life? So that's the training on a 15-second testimony. We've actually got a link or a video on how to do that. I know we're going through it quick here. That becomes your 3-minute testimony outline. You can also do that. It doesn't just have to be your salvation. It can be other testimonies. Some of you, you don't have the most colorful testimony. Maybe you early on knew the Lord and you didn't really have a lot of things that went off and became, in prison. Yours could be, I grew up loving God, but I thought I was working my way to heaven, but then I put my faith in Jesus, began to follow him, and now I live under grace instead of my efforts. I mean, because all of us at some point need to have that switch from law to grace, even if you weren't a bad person. The best person on this call needs the forgiveness of sins as the worst person on this call. So make sure that even if you don't think you have a colorful testimony, you have a testimony when you went from trusting in yourself and trusting in Christ. So now, what does a 3-minute testimony look like? Well, very similar. You're going to talk about my life before Christ, how I came to Christ, and my life since Christ. So we're going to do, let me back up here. We're not going to do best practices yet. So let me tell you the best practice. I am going to go ahead and go to it if I can. There we go. So here's what you need to do. You need to, Priscilla's going to time me here. I'm going to practice my 3-minute testimony live with you. But here's the thing. This isn't going to happen if you don't work on it. You're going to have too long of a testimony. You're going to wander and wind around, and this could be so good if you're prepared. So please do this, and I'm going to share with you. So Priscilla's got the timer. I'm going to do my best to do it in 3 minutes, and we're under grace, not law here. So if I'm longer, it's okay. So here we go. All right, Priscilla, let's do it.
Go.
I grew up in a very religious home. The church I went to would often talk about judgment and hell and that Jesus was coming back and you better be ready. And so my young heart, really the fear of the Lord was put in very early, and I enjoyed church and I tried to be the best kid I could. But as I got older into my early teen years, I started being drawn to what I thought was the coolest guys and the prettiest girls, and the things that they did and to fit in didn't quite line up with what I'd learned as a boy about being a follower of Jesus. And I began to compromise that. I began to go to parties. I began to drink. I've been be inappropriate with girls, just all the things that lead to teenagers just living for themselves. And as I progressed into my later teens and even early 20s, I would just even sometimes go out partying and come home at night, lay in my bed, the room spinning, and I would begin to think, I'm probably going to go to hell if I die. And I'm thankful. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I'm thankful for, even though it was a little extreme growing up, it really helped curb that. And I'm also thankful for praying parents because I know that they were praying for me, and I began to get a distaste for the party. And I began to rethink my life. I reached out to this young lady that I dated in the past that I thought was a really good person. I just got tired of the party. We started dating, got serious, married about a year or 2 years later. And I really straightened up on the outward. I was married. I quit the partying. I quit the foolishness. But inwardly, I was still empty and there was still sin in my heart. And then one day in a shower, it just all came to a head. Our marriage was struggling. Inwardly, I was empty and I just fell on my knees and I said, Jesus, please take control. I didn't know when I got out of that shower if I'd be any different. I'd made promises to God before and just went right back to my old ways. But this time was different. I began to read the Word of God every day. I began to really go to church and get serious. And then I'll never forget, like 6 months after that, I just one day, this weight lifted off my heart and I knew that I was saved. I knew that Jesus was in there and I was forever His. I've never doubted from that day forward about my salvation. My marriage was healed. Jesus Christ has changed my life. How long was that? That's maybe a little over 3 minutes. Oh, look at that, 2:25. Okay. All right. I could have talked more about my life. And I did it a little, obviously you're going to be doing it through a translator and you're going to do it more rhythmically. You're going to use more, short sentences. But that in a nutshell is my story. I could tell you so many more details, but when you're doing cross-cultural evangelism, effective testimony is one that's tight and concise and to the point. But you can also tell other testimonies. I could tell a whole testimony about how God saved my marriage and how I've been married for 40 years, 41 years this year. And it was from a marriage that we called the marriage from hell. And I could tell a whole story. I could do a 15-second version of that. I can do a 3 minute. So it just depends on audience. You can use this outline to expand or to talk about other things, the way that Christ has impacted your life. So a few other best practices before we move on. Keep it real. I didn't do this well, but one thing I want to make sure that I do when I share my testimony is to think, well, now my life's been perfect ever since. What I really should say is, you know what? I've really gained victory over sin and my marriage so much better, but I still have struggles. But God's grace is new every day, and I have peace with Him, and I keep returning to Him because they don't need to hear a false gospel that if you trust God, everything in your life's going to be okay. There is still battle, still struggles. We're still all fallen. We're still all being sanctified. And they need to know the reality of being a follower of Christ doesn't make all of your sin struggles and challenges and marital and children and kid issues and parenting issues and family. Those are still there. And so being real about your struggles, I didn't go in depth with that, deep, much detail. But in the context with men, I might go a lot deeper into my party life just to connect with them because they oftentimes struggle with alcohol and sleeping around and just all the things that can be in your past that the Lord's given you victory over. Also, don't preach. If you've been asked to give your testimony, I've heard this happen way too many times. This is not for your time to, preach. This is a time to tell what Jesus Christ has personally done in your life. Because more than likely, there's going to be somebody that's going to share the gospel and they're going to preach. So don't preach in your testimony unless there's just some verse you need to share and real brief, but you want to leave the preaching to whoever's responsible for sharing the gospel. And then keep the emphasis on what Jesus has done. Again, if you have had a very colorful past, you can really talk a lot about that. And at the end of your testimony, you're thinking, wow, boy, I'm not as bad as you. You want them to think, wow, Jesus is really, you want to really glorify what Christ has done in your life through the gospel. So those are some best practices. Your 15-second will help you get your 3 minute down. Practice, keep it real. Don't preach, and make sure you emphasize this is what Christ has done in my life since. All right, Priscilla. Well, I tell you, let me just wrap this up and then I'll let you wrap up because I can go through this really quick. So the e-ball you see there on the right, it's my buddy Ben there, the First Baptist Tyler. That is a great tool, especially that you're going to be there this summer during the World Cup. Now, let me go ahead and prepare team leaders. If Brazil is playing when your team is in the village, forget it. You just need to go find a big TV and join the villagers and root for Brazil. You're not going to do ministry when Brazil's playing. It would be actually
The whole
counterproductive.
country stops. The
It
president
does.
stops. The buses stop.
Yeah,
So you won't be, yeah, everything stops.
So if you're doing door to door that morning, you're not doing door to door that morning because you're not going to interrupt them watching the World Cup or they will kick you out of the village. So that's just going to be unique this year. So the e-ball is especially a valuable tool. There's on the YouTube channel, there's a video. Here's how to use the e-ball and share the gospel with the rules of soccer and the spiritual laws of the gospel. So I hope you'll use that. There's also on our YouTube playlist under evangelism, machete evangelism. I'll show you how to use a machete, talking about using culturally relevant things. There's another one called Trinity evangelism. But please, if you're going to be in evangelism, men's, women's ministry, get equipped for very culturally relevant ways of sharing the gospel with our YouTube playlist under evangelism and our website. We've got the e-ball script, uh, a bunch of different other options for sharing the gospel are on our way AO website. So please utilize those in getting prepared to bring the good news of Jesus Christ to the villages. All right, Priscilla, I'll let you wrap us up.
Okay, next steps before our next training meeting. Keep working on your 15-second and 3-minute testimony. We recommend it to write those down and practice them because, practice makes it progress. We're not looking for perfection, that's for sure. Make sure you download WhatsApp. If you don't have the app yet, your team is gonna have a group that you need to be a part of. You're gonna be getting a link to your group very soon. The other thing is let your leader know which ministry you would like to lead or be a part of so you can start preparation. If you don't know what you want to do yet, pray about it. Seek counsel. And soon you're going to know. And just remember, any ministry that you do, you're still on evangelism because this trip is about this. It's about the story of Jesus. So practice your testimony and pray about it. The other thing is collect team supplies. And if your leader already has a date for the packing party, save that date so you can make sure you're gonna be there. Keep fundraising. Make sure that you know when your due date is for your upcoming charges and practice Portuguese, Duolingo, Go Translate, or any other app that you would like. Also, videos, Portuguese songs. Oh, here's a freebie for you. Since you're going this year, it's going to be World Cup. If you get ahead of those dates, I would recommend that you bring a t-shirt that's either green or yellow because people are going to be dressed kind of like 4th of July here. People are going to be dressed in their Brazilian jerseys. You don't need to have a Brazilian jersey, but if you want to be a part of, maybe you could have a green or yellow t-shirt to wear that day. And get your visa. If you don't have a visa yet, make sure you start, especially minors or family of minors or leader of minors. Those take a little longer. So make sure you work on your visa. And then also make sure you're going to be here for our next training. Now, I would like to say thank you and obrigado. Thank you if you're here with us live today and, you forfeited your Sunday nap to be here today. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. If you're watching on the recording, thank you for making this far. And also, obrigada. And that's how we say thank you in Portuguese, obrigada, for the time you have invested, for your obedience to the Lord's calling to go on this mission trip. I could never thank you enough for all that you have invested to bless my people in Brazil. So we'll see you in the next training.